So today I want to talk about the largest aquarium that I currently have. Now, this isn't the largest aquarium that I've ever built, nor is it the largest that I'm ever going to have. If you guys know me at all, you'll know that I won't be able to keep this for too long before I want to build something much bigger. However, in today's video, what I'd like to do is do a basic breakdown of the entire tank. I want to do an overview. I also want to talk about how it all works, what I like about the system, what I don't like about it, things that I've changed, things that I want to add, and things that I'm thinking about changing. I also want to do a breakdown of the entire cost for the full system. I should also mention that absolutely everything you see here I've built, and I've made videos on all of it. So if you haven't seen any of the projects that you're about to see within this system, you can check the links in the description below and I'll have everything there for you. So let's start out with the obvious, the stocking. I only have my Asian Arowana in the tank currently, and he's about 22 inches long. However, some of you will remember the Red Hook Silver Dollars that I had added to this tank for a few months, and that stocking didn't work out. If you missed the video on what happened, again, that link will be in the description below as well. So the Arowana is currently on his own for now. The next thing you'll notice is the tiling is gone. The reason I removed the tiling is actually pretty simple. You see, the tiling that I originally had was this gray color, which was chosen based on the color of the room as well as the tank mates that were going to be in the tank. However, with the red hooks gone and only having the Arowana, I do plan to add a different species of fish to this tank eventually, and they won't look as good on this tile as they would against, say, a white or sand colored tile. So basically I decided to just take out the tile in advance and replace it when I'm ready. The Arowana doesn't mind whether there's tile or not in the tank. Now, if you haven't seen how to tile an aquarium, I also made a video on that. Now, of course, there's going to be some new viewers to this channel and seeing this video for the first time, and the number one thing you're going to ask is, why is the tank bare? It should have decorations and sand and wood and plants and whatever else I typically get suggested. The short answer to that is I made a few videos already on why tanks like this I keep bare as well as bare bottom. So if you're truly curious, check those videos out as well. Okay, so now let's do a basic breakdown of the entire system. Let's start with the lighting. The lighting is these pendant style lights that I built previously. If you didn't watch that video, they are actually plastic planters turned upside down. I painted the outside black and the inside white to make it more reflective. And inside is a 5000 Kelvin LED bulb, only drawing about 7 watts of power. And there's 3 of them. They're suspended by the ceiling and all the cords go into the next room where I can just hit a switch and turn them on. The tank is still covered in the double wall polycarbonate greenhouse panels. Now, given the size of these panels being so large, they are quite heavy and difficult for the Arowana to lift up if he ever jumps. However, it should be noted that he has never jumped in this tank as far as I know. On the back corner of the tank, I'm running my drip system through it. We'll take a closer look at this in a minute though. Now, the tank itself is 96 inches long, or 8 feet long, 25 inches tall, or 2 feet 1 inch, and 36 inches wide, or 3 feet, making it hold about 375 gallons of water. It's made of 3/4 inch acrylic all the way around. The other things that are obviously visible within the aquarium is the overflow weir and the circulation pumps. The circulation pumps are actually G-Bow RW15 wireless pumps. They're controllable and are rated from 1200 to 15,000 liters per hour, or about 300 to almost 4,000 gallons per hour, depending on the setting, drawing about 18 to 45 watts. Now, they're both on max power, one pointed towards the surface, one pointed towards the bottom. We'll come back to these in a minute. Now, the weir is actually covering up all of the plumbing behind the tank. And the plumbing serves 2 purposes. One is to do water changes through it when needed. Another is to return water from the pump. Now, the sump is actually a 100-gallon acrylic aquarium made with 1/2 inch acrylic. As you can see, it's also a fluidized sump. Now, the fluidized media is K1 coldness, and there's about 120 liters of it in here. On the other side of the fluidized sump is the return chamber, and within it it's holding 2 300-watt Eheim Jaeger heaters that are plugged into my temperature controller, And the return pump is a G-Cod DCT-8000, which is also a controllable pump, pumping up to 8,000 liters per hour, or a little bit more than 2,100 gallons. It does so drawing a maximum of 68 watts. Okay, so that was a really basic overview of the tank. Now let's get into specifics on how it works. But before we do that, I continuously get questions about this door, and how does it open? So that was a really basic overview of the tank, and before we move on to getting into the specifics, let's talk about this door. Believe it or not, I still get comments almost daily about this door. People wondering if it opens in and how do I get in and out of there. Common sense would tell you that doors can open either way depending on which way you install it. And believe it or not, this one opens into the other room. I don't know why I find that amusing, but I do get that comment quite a bit. Okay, so now let's cover how all of this works. Obviously, it starts with the filtration. But before the water gets to the filtration, it has to overflow from the main aquarium. Now you'll notice this black box here. That's called a weir. Some people will call it an overflow, but overflows are the actual plumbing that the water drains down. What protects it or goes around it is called a weir. Now the weir serves a few purposes. One, it looks better than all of the exposed plumbing behind it. Two, it stops fish from getting sucked in it. Three, it also controls the water height and aids in skimming the surface of the water, which will remove any protein buildup or anything that accumulates on the top of the tank, aiding in greater gas exchange. Now behind this weir is all of the plumbing. Now working left to right, the first is a straight standpipe. This pipe is going to take the majority of the water. With a ball valve installed below it, I can slightly turn it to decrease the flow of water that's flowing down this straight standpipe, and the water will slowly rise. Now if I didn't do that, I would get some really bad suction noises coming from this pipe. And with overflows, you want them as quiet as possible. So with that water rising, obviously it's going to keep rising and I'm going to drain my sump and flood my tank. However, the second pipe is considered to be somewhat of a Durso standpipe. It's another type of overflow pipe where water can drain down. However, this one only serves to drain a very minute amount of water, almost a trickle. Why do this? Well, the straight standpipe is the power horse. That's going to take the majority of the water, yet using it alone is very noisy. So allowing the water level to slowly rise up ever so slightly to that Durso pipe, and the Durso pipe take the remainder of the water, it's incredibly silent. It also serves as a slight safety factor. If the first initial pipe drains, which is highly unlikely, it's a 1-inch pipe and the gaps in here are really only a 1/2 inch, so it's basically impossible for it to clog, but if it ever did, the Durso can handle the water flow almost all alone. If it can't, I have another emergency pipe directly beside it. Now the emergency pipe is still below the surface of the weir, yet above the Durso pipe. So that means it literally never sucks water down it unless in case of the first two overflow pipes clog up. And that's something you really need to consider when planning out your plumbing, is plan for what's the worst thing that can happen and then try to avoid that. The next pipe is yet another 1-inch pipe, and it's the return. Now on top of the return is something called lock line. Now lock line is a type of aquarium plumbing that is adjustable and can be bend to wherever you need it to go. It tends to be a lot more expensive than regular PVC pipe, but it has far more options. For example, I can bend and twist this whichever way I want, and I've actually installed ball valves on either return, which I've split with a Y, so I can control the flow on either side. The last pipe in the overflow is my drain pipe. Now I felt like this was a must. I wanted to be able to drain about 80% of the water at any given point with ease. So there is a pipe that's actually plumbed into the side of the weir, and when I turn a ball valve down below, as long as I connect a hose to the output, I can drain 80% of the water within minutes. So now with the overflows explained, let's take a look at the sump. Again, this is a 4-foot long, 100-gallon sump. The first thing that happens when water is drained to the sump is it first needs to be mechanically filtered. Now, mechanically filtered means remove all the food particles, uneaten food, fish waste, etc. Basically polishing the water before it gets to the biological filtration. Now, previously you guys will remember that there used to be a filter sock in here. But the filter socks clogged entirely too fast on this tank. I was changing them every day to every 3 days. It grew to just be annoying. So I left the secondary mechanical filtration in there, which is a fine filter sponge. Really, it's a 30 ppi sponge. It's not that fine, but it does a really good job. So instead, I just left the filter sponge in place, and every few days I take it out, give it a rinse, and chuck it back in. Now, usually as a pre-filter, I like to use filter floss because it's cheap, it's effective, and it's easy to replace. But in circumstances like this, it's going to be more difficult to use filter floss, and using a sponge means I can pretty much just do the same thing, yet it never costs me to replace it. After the water enters the sump and is mechanically filtered by the sponge, it goes through this baffle. Now, the baffle has holes in the bottom for water to exit through the side. The water exits through the side and is biologically filtered by the fluidized media within it. Now, if you've never heard of a fluidized filter before, I'll give you a brief breakdown of what they are. Although I have gone over them in the past and broke down the pros and cons and why I use them and why I wouldn't use them. So if you truly want more information on them, go follow up on those videos. So in this system is a media called K1 Coldness. It's a small plastic media. And the way these work is pretty simple. You'll notice that they're always moving around, fluidizing and kind of banging into each other. So what's actually happening here is as your beneficial bacteria is building up on the outside of this media and they are constantly banging into each other, it's actually knocking off all of the older bacteria, leaving only the younger and more efficient bacteria on it. Yet on the inside is a protected area for bacteria to live out its entire life cycle and other microorganisms. Now, because this media only allows the youngest and most efficient bacteria to remain, it makes it for a highly efficient filter. You'll also notice at the bottom of the fluidized filter is a small bag of ceramic media. With all of my aquariums and sumps, I like to have a lot of extra biological media in there on standby, essentially. Meaning that I always have some extra cycled media if I ever need it, and if I'm ever starting up a new tank, or a quarantine tank, or a hospital tank needs some. The sump is covered by the same lids that cover the main aquarium. Now, as water flows through that large area of fluidized media, it gets to the other side, where the water can now be heated and returned to the main aquarium. Believe it or not, this tank is only being heated by 600 watts of heating. Now, given that this is a 375-gallon aquarium with a 100-gallon sump, that's a 475-gallon system. Using only 600 watts of heating, which is typically unheard of, that's almost a third of what is typically recommended. However, given that this is an acrylic aquarium, it has really good insulative properties, far superior than glass, for example. Now, the heaters are plugged into my heater controller that I showed you guys how to build previously. After water enters the heating chamber, it also has its pump in there, and the pump returns the water to the main aquarium, and the cycle continues. Now, the pump is rated a little bit more than 2,100 gallons per hour, but because it has to pump a few feet into the air, something occurs that is called head loss. Meaning that due to the pressure of the water and having to pump up higher, it doesn't actually flow as much water as you think it is. So I'm actually probably getting 1,600 to 1,800 gallons per hour out of this pump. Which means that I'm only turning the tank over 4 to 5 times per hour. Which is ideal for this type of sump and generally most types of sumps. But if I only had that amount of flow in the tank, it wouldn't be enough circulation. Now, I mentioned I wanted to do a video on filtration and circulation in the past, and I will be working on one and giving you guys that soon. But I'll give you a quick basic understanding. You see, when it comes to filtration, we often think about what is the total gallons per hour and what size tank is it rated for, and a lot of us tend to just go by that. But for me, when planning out an entire do-it-yourself system, you can be far more specific to your needs. For example, I can size the sump to exactly what I need and hold the exact amount of media that I need based on the actual fish that I'm keeping. You see, most filter ratings are pretty vague, but they gotta put something on the box. But sometimes you'll see something rated for 100 gallons, and I often question myself, 100 gallons of what? So with me having the exact amount of filter media that I now need to consider what is the ideal flow rate for the bacteria that's living on the media. You see, if you pump the water too fast through the media, it's not going to have enough contact time with the bacteria to be an efficient filter. You pump it too slow, and that will be great for the bacteria, however, it would be bad for the aquarium because things like ammonia and nitrate will build up a lot faster, and you might not be able to process the tank as quickly. So when sizing the flow rate appropriate to the size of the tank as well as the amount of media you have, sometimes, a lot of times, you still don't have enough circulation within the aquarium. So that's why you see things like the Airstone and the power heads or wave makers. You see, I've added the circulation pumps in there to better circulate the aquarium water. Now when you think of circulation, think of it this way. Imagine if you didn't have proper air ventilation within your home, yet your house's heater is on one end of the house. That means that the other end of your house is going to be cold, or you're going to create cold spots within your home, and the air quality is not going to be the same throughout the house. Yet if you open some windows and add in some fans and create more circulation within the house, a lot of that changes. And that really applies to an aquarium as well. With proper circulation, the water is more evenly heated, there's no hot spots or cold spots, and it also mixes up the water so it is more consistent in parameters throughout the tank, allowing the filter to evenly filter out the water. Again, we're going to have to dive in deeper into this in the near future. On the note of circulation and air pumps, you'll notice that the fluidized filter is being moved around by air bubbles. And this big Airstone here is also having air pumped through it. Now the pump that's creating all this airflow is called a Pondmaster AP60. Typically it's used for ponds, but since it's such a large and quiet pump, I prefer to use them when I need a lot of air. Which brings up another question. A lot of you guys ask me, how do I create this kind of airflow? Or what type of Airstone is that? The type of Airstone doesn't matter, although that is simply just a 2-inch round Airstone. But again, the Airstone doesn't matter, it's how much air you actually pump through it. And if you want this type of flow, you gotta buy massive air pumps. And they don't come cheap. You can buy cheaper ones, but the cheaper they get, typically the louder they are. In my case, the Pondmaster AP60 is quiet, but it's not quiet enough to be in this office, so I run airline all the way into the other room. Okay, now let's talk about what I do and do not like about this system. The first thing is the lighting. I really like the lighting. I do not like that the light switch is in the other room to turn it on. What I'm thinking about doing is running the wires to the other side of the room where the entrance is and hardwiring them into a real light switch that's on the wall. So not only can I flick the lights on to the room, but I can also flick the lights on to the aquarium. Now the only thing I don't like on this aquarium, and this might come as a surprise, is the actual filter. If I was going to change anything or do anything differently, it would have been the sump. But why did I do it this way? I already had most of the supplies on hand to build this type of sump, and I wanted to save the money. With that said, it is a highly efficient filter and does an amazing job. However, I know that many of you guys watch these videos and a lot of the choices I make influence your choices, and I really need you to know that this type of sump is expensive. You not only have to buy the media, but you need to buy a massive air pump, you need to have a huge sump, and in order for this to work properly, you can't just have a little bit. You need a lot in order to depend on it as the sole filtration for your aquarium. Plus it's noisy, you have to deal with evaporation, and if you're cycling your aquarium, this is going to gas off really fast and it's going to make your whole house stink. Plus, due to the extra air pump, which tends to need to be a larger air pump, you are also drawing more power. So in the long run, it's going to cost you more money than pretty much any other filter. But with that said, I already had everything for it, so I decided to use it. Okay, so now let's move on to the maintenance of this aquarium. Technically, the maintenance for this is next to nothing. In terms of upkeeping the sump, I rinse the sponge out in it every few days as needed. However, if it ever gets clogged, the filter can still run because there are holes at the end of the baffle that will allow the mechanical filtration portion of the sump to rise and overflow in there if the sponge ever gets clogged. Which it hasn't yet, but again, you always need to think about what's the worst thing that could happen. I also rarely have to ever do water changes due to the drip system installed on the back corner. Now the drip system continuously drips water into the aquarium, essentially diluting it. All of that extra water overflows down to the sump, and in the sump there's a bulkhead with a hose attached, and as water level rises, that older water drains out of that bulkhead and into a drain in my floor. Now how much water you drip depends on a number of factors. One is obviously the stocking and the size of your aquarium. My suggestion for a drip system when you install it is to start off with a low flow rate, perhaps 1 gallon per hour, and see what happens to your nitrates. If you see them dipping down, slowly turn down the drip until the nitrates essentially flatline, or they stay where you want them to be. If you have 0 nitrates, you certainly should turn it down because you're probably dripping entirely too much water. As your nitrates rise, you can turn up your drip, but basically you're looking to dial it in, so it takes a lot of testing. There's no rule of thumb here. For me, I drip about 2 gallons per hour, which is about 50 gallons a day. So on a weekly basis, I drip about 100% of the water volume in the main aquarium. I'm also on a well, so I don't have to pre-treat my water before it hits the tank, and it doesn't cost me anything to run. Those are some things you need to consider as well. Now, a drip system can eliminate water changes completely, but it really needs to be running at a really high level. However, for me, the drip system essentially just prolongs the water changes to be about needing one as little as every month or every 2 weeks. And when I do a water change, it's usually 50 to 70%. Now, because I have a bare bottom tank with ample circulation within the aquarium, I also don't have to siphon out the bottom. So essentially, the aquarium is very, very, very low maintenance. Especially with the sump, because the media is 0 maintenance and it lasts a lifetime. So on a typical week, I will rinse the sponge a couple times, but that's it. Okay, so now let's go over the cost of this tank, just to give you guys a basic idea and a rough estimate of what it might potentially cost you. I'll also round up or down to the nearest $5 here to keep the math easy. The lights were $20, the lids were $20, the tank was $1,550, and this just covered the acrylic for it. The weir within the aquarium was $25, the stand, $300, the drip system, $15, all the plumbing, $75, the sump, $250, and that includes the baffles within it as well. The controller that runs the heaters, $25. So about $2,280 for the main components of the tank. We haven't even gotten to media or equipment though. And this is where things can add up quickly as well. There's about 120 liters of K1 Caldus within the sump, and at the time I purchased it, which was several years ago, it was $300. The return pump was $100. The power heads that are circulating the water within the aquarium, I got both of them for $100. The air pump $100, and both heaters for $100. So that's another $720. Coincidentally, that all adds up to about $3,000. Now that's $3,000 in Canadian dollars. I know a lot of you are watching from the United States, and in US dollars that would have been $2,300. I could have easily shaved off about $400 or more by simply going with a different type of sump. However, I already had the media and the air pump. I also already had things like the heaters. With all of that said, that $2,300 US dollars might sound like a tremendous amount of money, but let me put this into perspective. I went ahead and I priced out the acrylic aquarium alone based on the specs, meaning how long it is, wide, and how tall, and using the same materials that I built it out of, without the weir or plumbing or anything done to it. I priced it out with a few acrylic tank manufacturers, and the average price was about $5,000 plus tax and freight. So I guess when you put it into perspective like that, the pricing isn't that bad anymore. So I guess that's it for today's video. I really just wanted to give you guys a breakdown of my largest aquarium, how it works, and some of the costs. We haven't done a video like this in several years, and they used to be one of my favorite videos to make. Now, I do understand that there are a lot of other things that we should dive deeper into. I know a lot of you want more information on sumps and how overflows work and that sort of thing, and I do plan to potentially cover those in future videos. If there is something else you'd like to see me do, let me know in the comment section below. And I hope that you guys enjoyed today's video, but if not, join me next Thursday and I'll have something different for you.